You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode 244. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. What do mango chicken curry, Persian roasted chicken with saffron, turmeric, and lemon, and tacos, homemade tacos with fresh tortilla shells toasted in a frying pan, along with homemade salsa verde, all have in common? Yes, they are all absolutely delicious. They are all dishes that require a certain level of time to prepare and ingredients, multiple different ingredients, many of them fresh ingredients, some from specialty shops. And they are all things that we had for dinner last week. And I say that with a mix of pride and shame. Pride because I really love to cook and I really love making these types of meals for my family. And shame because the reason I made these meals was not because I'm trying to be Martha Stewart or the best cook for my family. It is because I was procrastinating, or as the title of this podcast suggests, Procrasti-Cooking. Yes, I was back at work for the first week following the holiday break, and I was on a major struggle bus in terms of trying to get motivated. And I'm sharing this with you today because I know that I'm not the only one who struggles with motivation and procrastination. And even though I know all the tools, or a lot of the tools, many tools to help overcome and prevent procrastination, there I was. And instead of doing the work that I thought I was so excited to do, I was on the internet looking up how to make mango chicken curry using frozen mango, thinking about where to buy the best frozen mango, and how excited I was to try putting cardamom in this dish like they do at the restaurant up the street where they have a fabulous mango chicken curry dish. So you're probably getting hungry, and so am I actually thinking about it. And you're probably not here because you want to learn about cooking. You're probably here because you think maybe you're struggling with procrastination and maybe there are some ideas here that can help you. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. What we're going to talk about is how sometimes you find yourself procrastinating, you find yourself unable to focus. And if that is the case, I want to validate your feelings. I want to validate that procrastination and offer you some tools to get yourself out of it. We are now a week later, and I sort of cringingly confess that we did have roast leg of lamb for dinner last night, which took time to prepare. But tonight we're probably doing takeout, which is a pretty good sign that I am back on track. So what we're going to do today is talk about how to regain your focus after you have kind of lost that focus when you are procrastinating. And I'm going to share with you the tools that I have found to be most helpful in terms of regaining that momentum, feeling excited about work again, because I know it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And so I want to help you. Without further ado, step one. Right? If you find yourself procrastinating, is to give yourself some grace. Now, this is because I know that the reason that we procrastinate isn't because we are inherently flawed people. It is because life happens. Now, in this case, the reason that I was procrastinating, it was pretty clear to me. Number one, we had come off 2 weeks of holidays. And for any of you who take time off, whether it's over the holiday break around Christmas, New Year, which is where I was coming from, or when you take a vacation, sometimes it's middle of the year or at some point in the year, and you're gone from the office, you're gone from work long enough that the routines have fallen away. then what you might notice is that when you get back to your desk, when you get back to work, you have lost all of that momentum and it feels heavy. It's like there's this inertia that is keeping you stuck. And it's very similar to driving a car or riding a bike, where that first gear is often that hardest gear to engage, right? If you think about learning how to drive on a standard car, maybe I'm dating myself here. I don't know that standard cars even get produced anymore, but I learned to drive on standard. And one of the big challenges that people learn to overcome as new drivers, driving a stick shift, as it were, is going from rest into that first gear, right? Moving forward. And that's often where people stall out because there's a bit of an art to it. And so you might find that when you're back from vacation, and I speak with lawyers often who struggle with this, where maybe you're back from vacation, maybe you've just had a huge trial and you're tired. Maybe it's slow, right? The market is slow and you're slow. There's an inertia that comes along. And it's like, even though you have all the time in the world to get things done, there is so little motivation to actually go ahead and do those things. Now, in addition to the break itself, I felt tired. If you have young children at home, chances are a break to you feels exhausting, maybe even more exhausting than when you're back at work because of the minutia and the day-to-day. Now, my children are not that young, and so we've actually moved out of that stage where there have been times where holidays are actually now restful. But the problem here was that it was Christmas. And so we had a lot of excitement and activity leading up to Christmas and then Christmas itself. And this year, we also, in addition to my normal decluttering routine, which I typically do after the holidays, we also had to have exterminators come to our house. Now, I share this and I pause. Should I even share this? But I will. We have these awful little things in our house. They're called silverfish. If you've ever experienced them, you know what they look like and you know that they're very annoying and they're harmless. And we live in a climate that is very humid and they kind of get into the infrastructure of your house or your building, whatever it is. And then they're just gross. They're annoying. And they didn't bother me too much, but my children were really bothered by them. They still are. And it kind of got to this point where instead of like it being sort of this quiet thing, anytime they would see a silverfish, they would yell, "Mom, Mom, come kill the silverfish." And, it was kind of becoming a bit of an interruption. And my children, God bless them, if they ever listen to this episode, they are old enough to deal with the silverfish on their own. They're 13 and 11. But somehow I was the designated silverfish destroyer and, it was starting to wear on me. So I decided to take the bull by the horns and bring in the exterminators. And so over the holidays, that was a 3-day undertaking, just decluttering the house and getting all ready. Turns out you really need to prep your house for that. A day of extermination and then a day to put everything back together and then re-welcome my family back into the house. I sent everybody off for a couple of nights because I thought this is much easier to do on your own. And also there's a period of time where you want to leave your house to air out. So anyhow, I'm so glad I did that. But again, you can imagine coming back to work after the holiday break, I did not feel rested. Now, there are a couple other things that added to that. I had a rather unpleasant interaction with a family member before the break, which I won't share the details of, but I share it because it has affected me. It has kind of occupied that space in my mind, kind of the aftermath of a conversation where you're just like, you're kind of triggered. And I share that because chances are you may have had one of those conversations before or during or after the holidays, and it can kind of distract you. And then finally, I've got this lingering health thing. Now, I'm sorry to just share this laundry list, but I do it because chances are if you're procrastinating, you've got a laundry list of your own. And so here it is. It's just nothing life-threatening, but one of those sort of mystery ailments that has me back at the doctor and nobody can really tell me what it is, but it's bothering me. And, it takes, 6 months to see a specialist. I am on the wait list to set an appointment with the specialist. It's like, come on, people. So all this to say, give yourself some grace. If you find that you are procrastinating, if you are cooking mango chicken curry instead of doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, there's probably a pretty good reason for that. And so we want to start out simply by acknowledging that it happens, that you are not alone, and chances are there's a pretty good reason why you are procrastinating. Now, it can also be very much tied to the nature of the work that you have in front of you. And I've listed all the reasons why I was feeling a little bit of non-motivation, if you will. And in terms of work, there wasn't a lack of motivation in the sense that I didn't want to do my work. I know that I do. I just didn't feel like I wanted to do the work last week. And I'll get into that a little bit more as we go through the list of steps that I took to move forward, but that's kind of how I was feeling. So once you've done that first step, which is really just to give yourself grace, right? To see how it makes sense that you would be procrastinating, to accept where you are, right? Where you are right now, then what we want to do is be practical about life. Now, I used to think of myself as practical Paula, and I still kind of do because I'm very practical. So, as much as I wanted to just do nothing, I knew I needed to do something. And so, my suggestion to you is to do what I did, which is to identify the minimum viable steps that you needed to do each day in order to feel accomplished enough, right? To do the big pieces that you absolutely must do to move yourself forward. So for me, that meant looking at my work list and saying, okay, what do I really need to do this week? And I did those things, right? So when I was trotting downstairs, I work upstairs in our house. I go down to the kitchen to get dinner ready for the kids and for my husband. And I thought, okay, what are the key things I need to do? So make yourself a list of the absolute must-dos and do those things. And that's going to keep you moving forward. Hopefully, it will start to build some momentum and it will ensure that you're not dropping balls. That was my biggest concern. I don't want to drop any balls. I want to keep the momentum, or I want to start the momentum and start moving forward. But I also know that this week isn't the time that I'm going to be really killing it. I'm not going to be going above and beyond. So do the bare minimum and just get moving. This is that first gear, right? You're going from inert to moving at a slow speed. What are the key things you absolutely must do? Pencil those into your calendar and get those things done. Now, that leads to step 3. And this is a step that to me was actually the most impactful in terms of getting motivated to work, right? Obviously, I didn't have trouble getting motivated to make dinner. That's inherently fun to me for whatever reason. But getting back into my work, that was hard. And so what I did was I went back to my why. And if you've ever heard the concept of your why, I know Simon Sinek often talks about your why. What is the purpose of your work? What is really, really important to you about what it is that you do? That to me is very grounding. When I step back and I think about the work that I do professionally and why it matters to me, that is a way for me to channel the energy that is inherently motivating, right? That intrinsic motivation that people speak about. Why is this really valid? Why is this really important to you? So the way that I did that, now to me, that involves going somewhere that is not home. There's a coffee shop near my house that I love to go to. I sit on their outdoor patio. It is heated. It is lovely. That's where I go when I want to think. And so I knew I wanted to get out of the house to do that. And again, I was kind of struggling against this productivity thing, right? I wanted to do productive work. I didn't feel like going to the coffee shop was very productive, but I fought that instinct. And on Thursday morning, so it did take me time because I had deliverables earlier in the week, but I set a date with myself and I went to the coffee shop and I went with a care package for myself of some notes that I have regarding my business, my practice, where I want to go. And I sat down with that list and I reviewed. I reviewed some of the foundational documents that I created during my coaching training. I reviewed some of my business goals for the year. I reviewed some of the plans that I have. And what I did is I sat down and I reflected, I journaled a little bit, and I became much more refocused on why it is that I do what I do. And for those of you who are sole practitioners or practitioners who have a high degree of autonomy and independence in your practice where you really are the instigator of your workflow, then you'll probably be able to relate to the experience that I have as a solo practitioner, as a coach, right? I am the motivator. I am the person who goes out and seeks the projects and the work that I get involved in, right? This is something that I need to build on my own and I do it independently. And so when you practice and there's a high degree of independence and autonomy, there can also be this feeling of, you can feel a little bit disconnected. And so sometimes it can be hard to reconnect. I found that sitting down with myself and really reclaiming my focus was a really good way to reconnect with that part of me that feels really inspired to do what I do and to do it the way that I do it. So in my case, when I think about why I love doing the work that I do, I mean, I do some work that is group project based work, and I also do work that is more independent. And I attach that because I really love being a resource for lawyers that is an independent resource, right? I know when I was practicing in a firm setting, I really wanted to have somebody who was just disconnected from the firm, not because I didn't want to be connected to my firm, but because I wanted to have another person to speak with. And so I think it's important for me to have that role for lawyers so that you feel like you've got a place where you can go where it's not your friend, it's not your partner, it's not your mentor, it's not your boss, it's someone who's independent. And so when I attach myself to that and I think about, okay, there are challenges that come with being a sole practitioner as a coach, but there's a reason for it, right? So starting to anchor back into my motivation, that really helped to kind of get me excited about getting back into work again. And it was interesting because I then had a conversation with a lawyer about their practice. And one of the questions that I asked that lawyer was like, what is it that compels you to practice law in the first place? And we got into this really amazing conversation. And this lawyer was able to articulate very clearly what it was that really felt impactful, right? Why this lawyer does what they do. And I could tell by their body language, by the way they described it, the way their face lit up, they smiled, their posture changed. And all of a sudden, it's like the lights go on. And so for you, if you find that you're really struggling to work, sometimes what can be really helpful is to take a step back, is to give yourself some time and space to reflect on some of the really core reasons why it is that you do the things that you do, why you do your professional work. Lawyering is a really hard job, right? It is not for the faint of heart. It's hard to become a lawyer. It's hard to be a lawyer. It's hard to grow and practice as a lawyer. You have challenges that you're resolving. You've got clients who depend on you. Stakes can be really high. Timelines can be high. So why do you do it? And when you can reconnect with your purpose, when you can reconnect with what really matters to you, then that starts to feed that intrinsic motivation. You start to feel that sense of purpose that then makes it easier for you to move forward with tasks that otherwise might feel really daunting. And they're probably daunting because they are, right? They are challenging. So that was what I found to be really grounding. And what was so interesting too in that reflection was I mentioned I went back to some of the original sort of writing that I did for myself, right? Some assignments actually that were part of my coaching program about why I wanted to be a coach, what kind of a coach I was going to be, what type of presence I would have as a coach. And in looking back at those documents, I wrote one at the end of 2017, one at the beginning of 2018. And some of the reasons that I expressed there for coaching, right? Wanting to support lawyers, wanting to be that trusted confidant, wanting to be that person that can help lawyers really identify their potential, where they want to go, and have a thought partner, somebody who is there to listen, someone who is there to witness them, someone there to help them develop their strategies step by step and to help them move forward with the things that they find most challenging. That is exactly why I started my coaching practice, and it is exactly why I continue to do my coaching practice. And what's so interesting is when I look at my why, when I look at those core reasons, I still feel so connected to the purpose. And what's so interesting too is how your lens shifts, because I wrote those statements, 8 years ago, some of them. And now when I look back on that, I see it through a different lens because I now have so much more texture, so many more client experiences that I can think of where I can see how the work that I'm doing is impacting them, is helping them to see their potential, is helping them gain clarity on what to do next, is helping them identify specifically the points they want to make in a difficult conversation. So it was really neat. It was really grounding and absolutely helped me to regain my focus. So as I mentioned, this was probably the most helpful thing in terms of regaining my focus and what followed from that step. So just going back, I started by giving myself some grace, by acknowledging this is normal, by seeing the reasons why I was procrastinating and kind of just allowing those to feel the way that they felt. I then did what I needed to do, right? What are the key steps? What are the practical, must do's this week? I decided to take it a little bit easy, which is hard to do, right? I know so many of my clients are wired that way, right? You feel like you're at the office, you need to bill, you need to work, you need to produce. And sometimes we need to also just step back and say, this is going to be a slower week. We need to give ourselves that grace. It can be really hard. That third step then was finding my why, like reconnecting with my purpose. Why is this work so important to me? And then the next step for me was ways to support myself. What support do I need here? So there's for me that initial layer of support, which is me supporting me. That is my first course of action, is to create some sort of a checklist, some sort of a goal, some sort of an idea of what I'm trying to do. And so there's some journaling that I do. There's really some self-reflection. And that to me is support, taking care of my health, trying to get more sleep, trying to get enough rest and movement. And, are my basic needs being taken care of? So there's an element of self-support, but then there's also reaching out to others for support. Ironically, one of the things that I wanted to do was to connect and reconnect with people who I wanted to be in touch with. And at the end of last year, I was really busy. I was really, really, really busy. And one of the things that I didn't do that I felt not great about was that I have sort of people who I've been meaning to connect with. These are people who I maybe communicate with on LinkedIn, which for me is probably my toughest platform to stay in touch with people on because I'm not there as regularly as my email, for example. So there were people whose emails I hadn't responded to, where we'd been wanting to set up some sort of date, whether it's a phone date or an in-person. And there were people in my inbox. There were people just on my mind that I wanted to reach out to. And yet, because I felt so, so unmotivated and, I don't really want to talk to anybody, I had this resistance to that. And that felt kind of annoying, to be honest, because I thought, I finally have the time. I finally have the time to reach out and connect with people. And yet I just don't feel like doing it. I don't feel good about that connection. And so I ended up going on to LinkedIn and I was commenting on some posts. I was checking in on, what are people doing these days? And I noticed there were a few people who posted about their holidays and some of their reflections on it. And I felt it really comforting to see that some people kind of felt the way I was feeling, right? They're like, the year's off to a slow start. This is the slowest week of the year. And I was like, okay, so I'm not the only one. And that was really validating. And then I took the opportunity to reconnect with some people who I really wanted to connect with. And so I've started taking those steps. And for you, you might find that there are people who you want to reach out with and connect with. And maybe you've got emails like I do where it's been a few months and you feel like too much time has gone by. I don't think too much time ever really does go by. I think we can always circle back and we can always say, I'd really love to see you. And people do understand, right? People are busy too. They understand. And chances are they'll just be happy to hear from you. And so if that's you, if this resonates with you, I encourage you to find, people that you want to reconnect with and to take those initiatives. So I feel really good about that. It turns out I now have a number of social appointments, which is kind of exciting. I've got a walk this afternoon with a wonderful counselor turned lawyer, Jane Rossworn, actually. She was on last week's podcast, which I listened to this morning. She's amazing. So I'm excited to see her. And I've got a few more social dates coming up this week and next. And I'm really excited about that. I think that was really missing from my holiday break. My holiday break was much more focused on family. And so to me, there's a real sense of connection that comes when I start to rebuild my connections with the people who are close to me professionally and all that. So I'm really excited about that. So if you find that you're lacking motivation, that you feel like you're procrastinating, putting some appointments in your calendar, right? And by appointments, I don't mean that to sound cold and calculated, like put those appointments in. I mean, find the people that you want to connect with and make those social connections. For me, I know that those are often the connections or the appointments that go to the wayside when I'm really busy. And it's not because I don't want to, it's because I get busy and I simply don't feel like I have the time. But if you are in that boat, I would encourage you to figure out how you can add a little bit of that into your life. Reconnect with some of the people that you want to spend time with in your life. I can promise you that you will feel so much better as a result. So that is another source of support. I talked about, supporting yourself, reaching out and finding people in your life that you want to reconnect with. And then finally, I also encourage you to think about what kind of additional support. So I'm a coach. Obviously, I love, love, love supporting people. And I work with a coach, and I mentioned maybe a few podcast episodes ago that I signed up for a program this year that is a new program for me, and it's focused on business, right? It's focused on my coaching practice as a business. And the reason that I'm doing it is because I want to really tighten up my systems, much like many lawyers that I work with. You reach a point in your practice where you start to see that your systems need a bit of an upgrade. And so that's my main reason, is to take what I've been doing. I mean, I love cooking, obviously, and I love cooking analogies. So the analogy that I've been using in describing it is like I'm standing in a kitchen and I've got all the best ingredients to put together the most amazing meals. And yet what I would like to do is get the recipes on paper, right? Get the recipes down so that I'm not creating from scratch every time. I'm able to explain better concepts to people and to support people better because it's clearer to them what I'm doing. And so that's a big part of what I'm doing this year. It's a little bit quiet and behind the scenes, and maybe I'm the only person who's going to notice, but I feel like the step in my practice, right? Just creating the systems, creating the frameworks, creating the clarity is going to make my practice feel so much more elegant and feel so much just more clear. And so I'm excited to do that work. And at the same time, it's hard, right? As a coachee now, I'm seeing how I have resistance, right? There's one thing to set goals and it's another thing to implement them. And I attended my own coaching call this morning, and I was so glad that I did. It was a group call, and at one point, the coach called on me, and I was able to share, here's what I'm struggling with, and here's how I'm moving forward. And as a result of that call, I now have these 6 clear items. I have allocated each of those to the first 6 months of the year. It turned out really nicely that way. And now I feel so much better about it, right? That feeling of overwhelm, that sense of dread, it has dissipated in the sense that I now have a much more clear plan going forward. So even as a coach, sometimes we need to be coached, right? Even though I have the tools, I benefit from having someone else help me see what needs to be done, ask me questions that help me focus. And it becomes a blend, right? I like to use what I'm learning from other coaches with what I already do myself. One of the strategies I'm finding really helpful right now is my goal setting strategy. I call it the Great Goal Framework, and you can learn about it if you go back to episode 6 of this podcast series. I have my own group coaching cohort that I'm leading today. I'm so excited to meet them. I'm going to do that actually in 12 minutes, which is very exciting. So we'll be wrapping up soon. And it's an acronym, GREAT, with an exclamation point. And it's a framework I find so helpful for setting big goals and small goals. And I'll be teaching that to my clients in a few short minutes and using that as a basis for the work that we're going to do over the next 6 months. So that's really exciting. I may have mentioned this. I have mentioned this in social media. I don't know if I've mentioned on the podcast that the group that has formed, it's a group of women lawyers, and we are 4 in the group, or there are 4 amazing women who have joined the group, and I'll be meeting with them today. I'm so excited, and they're all family lawyers. And so this is the first time I've run a group where everybody has come from the same practice area. And what I'm really interested in is seeing how we can take that and really niche the coaching, niche the focus. And so if you're a family lawyer or you know a family lawyer who is a woman lawyer who is a few years into practice, so it tends to work more effectively when you've got a few years of experience under your belt and what you're looking for is additional support and community, then I would encourage you to either reach out to me or share this with them, share this idea with them, because it's certainly not too late to join us at this stage, especially if you're listening when this podcast episode goes live. And I just think it's going to be an amazing experience for all of us. So I'm excited to do that. Now, with that, I am going to share the last step, which really is just to create that plan, right? Go get that support that you need and then create a plan. And to me, and that's kind of what I've been doing over the course of the last week and a half, is getting clear. For me, the inertia happened at the new year. The holdup for me is, what do I want to focus on this year? And so my planning is really centered on my yearly goals. Now, if you're experiencing procrastination at a different stage of the year, then your inertia might be caused by something else. Your solution, your plan might be different from mine, but this is what I'm doing. I'm focusing on my plan for the year, and I feel increasingly good about what that looks like. And also, as the weeks are now passing on, we're halfway through the second week back after the break. Things are starting to fill up, right? My calendar is getting back to normal. I'm having more appointments with my clients and with my colleagues that I work with. And so I feel so much more momentum and I feel so much more excited. So that initial procrastination that I felt last week is starting to dissipate. And so for you, I want you to think about your plan, right? If you're kind of, you've gone through those different steps, what does the plan forward look like for you? And if you'd like support, thinking about what that plan is going to look like, and it could be something more short term, right? It might be that you just need to make a plan for a very specific project that you're working on, a conversation that you need to have and you feel stuck. It could be something that discrete. It could be a bigger plan, something more of what I'm thinking about, which is how do I want to spend the next year knowing that I have kind of a goal in mind? How do you get clear on that? And how do you break it down so that you can go into that plan and gain the momentum? And I do this work with lawyers throughout the year, right? I mean, I think especially when you're wanting to be strategic about the key elements in your practice, or if you're making a transition. So this is something you can do any time of the year. And if you'd like my support, I would, of course, be delighted to help you. So with that, I am going to say thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope you have been able to relate to some of what I'm sharing, and that if you find yourself procrastinating or Procrasti-Cooking or Procrasti-researching, whatever it is that you do when you're kind of avoiding that bigger task, I hope you feel validated. You are absolutely not alone. I hope that some of the tools I've shared with you are ones that you can see yourself applying in your practice or in any area where you do find yourself procrastinating. And of course, if you would like my support, I would absolutely love to help you. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. So with that, I'm going to wish you a highly motivated and productive week. And thank you for joining me here. It's been such a treat to connect with you. And I'll look forward to reconnecting again next week. Take care. Bye for now. Hey, are you still there? It occurred to me after recording today's episode that I talked about procrastination for an entire episode without mentioning a couple of really great resources that are available for free that you can download today. They are going to be linked to the notes that accompany this episode, and you'll find those on my website. If you have any trouble finding them, just send me a note. Those resources are number 1, a procrastination protocol checklist. That's a quick one-pager that you can use next time you feel yourself procrastinating. And then there's another resource, a little more comprehensive. It is a podcast roadmap of all of the episodes I've ever recorded about time management. And it's broken down into categories. And not surprisingly, one of those categories is procrastination. So you'll find a number of episodes there that might be helpful for you, as well as episodes about other elements of time management. And if you put all of those together, you end up with that comprehensive system that helps mitigate against procrastination. So my dear friend, thank you. Check out those resources. They will be very helpful to you. And I also wanted to share, because I mentioned when I recorded my episode that my call was coming up with my group coaching mastermind group, and I've had that call now. And they were absolutely amazing. I cannot tell you how exciting it was to meet everybody on Zoom at the same time, to see their gorgeous faces, to hear from each of them, and to welcome them into the program. So I just wanted to report back that it was absolutely amazing. I was so delighted to meet them. And if you are a lawyer, a family lawyer who is thinking about potentially joining the program, it really isn't too late. And I would love to hear from you if that's something that you would potentially be interested in. So with that, I am going to sign off for the week. And I so very much look forward to reconnecting next week. Bye for now. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.